Hi everyone, I'm Efe Yarbasi. I'm with the UMTRI Engineering Systems Group. We're going to be talking about on-road safety assessments for ADS today. So we're going to be talking about our work, which includes pre-deployment and post-deployment, basically an end-to-end measurement infrastructure. I'm going to be talking about third-party testing, starting from a trip recorder approach, and then an expanded EDR concept, and some onboard safety monitoring. And then we're going to talk about the benchmarking with on-road operation. So let me start with the ground truth trip recorder. So we call it GTTR internally. What is that? That is basically an instrumented vehicle. In this project, we actually had two projects on this. We had 3 different vehicles of 3 different classes, as you can see on the picture on the left. These vehicles are retrofitted with different instruments. These instruments include 6 to 7 cameras, 5 to 6 radars, and one rotating LiDAR. The numbers are decided on the vehicle geometry, basically. The purpose of this project, of this instrumentation, is to observe daily behavioral performance in operation and also capture the responses to the threats. And also, this is the second iteration of the project. The first iteration had a bit more sensors. The retrofit kit was a bit bigger. This is one of the main reasons that we minimized this was to show scaling at a lower cost so that we can achieve more with less data and with less cost. And on the right, you can see one of the outputs or one of the measurements strategies that Carol was just talking about. This is basically comparing some competencies between drivers. And you can see 4 different driver examples, and each radial axis is a competency like pedestrian crossing, left turn across path, lane change. So this actually allows us to make comparisons between drivers. Or in this project, we didn't use it, but if an ADS agent is driving these vehicles, you can actually use these kind of retrofit kits to make comparisons. And for example, if you look at driver 7 relative to the others, and the dashed pentagon in the middle is the fleet average, you can see that, for example, driver 7 is performing poorly on pedestrian crossing, but they are performing great in lane change and merging. In this project, actually, the drivers and vehicles were matched, so these kind of have the impact of the vehicle as well. Here's a naturalistic video. This wasn't staged. That was close. So on the right, you can see the time to collision with accelerations, which is not just the kinematics, but computation of time to collision with accelerations. That means the other vehicle's motion is also accounted for. As you can see, it starts from 1.2 seconds, goes down to 0.5 seconds, and when the maneuver is made, it again increases. So in our 300-hour plus data set, we captured several of these events and other events as well. And we've talked about, curse of rarity today. If you instrument enough vehicles and if you put them on public roads, eventually you're going to run into these kind of scenarios. Obviously, these are rare events, but it is good to collect data on these rare events in the real-world conditions. Another thing that I want to talk about is the expanded pre- and post-crash data for EDRs, event data recorders. This is particularly important for ADS and ADAS systems. EDRs are originally designed for, airbag applications, pre-ADS era for human drivers. So they generally record a limited amount of data with a limited amount of sampling rate. It generally includes a limited amount of pre-crash kinematics and some post-crash data like delta V, the change of speeds after the collision has happened. In this project, we were exploring an approach to enhance pre- and post-trigger data to understand the awareness and actions of the ADS. For example, when a crash has happened, we need to understand what the perception stack sees and what the decision was made. And the other thing that we were looking into was to leverage ADS sensing for better understanding for all crashes. So even if a human driver is driving or an L2 driver has been driving in that collision scenario, we need to understand what the perception stack has seen, because otherwise we think that it's leaving evidence on the table with this kind of rich perception stack. And also for VRU strikes, sometimes the delta V is so low that the EDR isn't triggered. So we were actually looking to add triggers for potential VRU triggers, VRU strikes as well, so that we can capture those scenarios in the EDR and we can analyze them. Finally, for me, I'm going to be talking about the operational safety monitoring of a deployment we had in the city of Detroit. As you can see on the video on the right, there are a few examples of VRU scenarios where in regular naturalistic driving conditions, the perception stack perceives some VRUs, and even though these were not like dangerous scenarios, we need to be able to identify and analyze these kind of scenarios. And on the left, sorry, you will see an example of daily dashboard for 100 robotaxis. This is a sample table, and as you can see, there are different events and emergency numbers, and then because the cities are different, the drivers are different. The distributions of events and how they happened are also different, which means that when we are analyzing these kind of events and scenarios, we need to account for these as well. So, yeah.
All right. So the last few, again, this is obviously a quick overview of many things that we're doing. Working together, our groups do a lot of this kind of stuff on essentially on-road testing. So this slide is showing, and this one, and I believe the next one, is talking about a very large-scale telematics-based evaluation of a level 2 system. So this was sponsored by NHTSA and heavily supported by General Motors. They partnered with us and involved using their data. And the really cool thing, obviously, about telematics is that you can have a lot of it for not very much money, and it spreads across the entire country. So naturalistic driving studies, of course, super detailed. And in fact, we used some of the naturalistic driving data to kind of help us understand what we're seeing in the very, kind of limited snapshot telematics data. But unlike NDS, we've got the entire country covered. I think we didn't have anybody in Hawaii and Alaska on this one. And the previous one, I think we were missing Vermont or something really weird. But anyway, so we have, in this particular study, we had, I believe it was, it was 10,000 vehicles, 4.5 million miles in the span of a year. So we're up in really large numbers relative to NDS. And the model years, so there's actually been a series of we're on the third study currently. So we're looking at model years as they kind of increase capability. So for this particular one, for model year 21, which included a lane change on demand feature, key findings included, so first off, really important, and this is ADAS now, not ADS, but people use these systems in benign settings. So one of the interesting things, and you'll see this with some other, so when you see news reports on comparisons of performance between, let's say, level 2 systems and manual driving, for example, people consistently are using those level 2 systems in more free flow, non-urban, night when there's fewer vehicles and non-rain conditions. And so what you get is a natural reduction in risk just in the conditions that they're driving in. And so if the study that you're looking at is not accounting for that, is not doing matching of conditions, then they're sort of bundling in a reduced risk that people sort of create in with their system. So it looks like the system is doing better than it may in fact be. So what we do is we actually do matching. We're very careful about matching the conditions. This is kind of, and you'll see my apples to apples diagram in a couple of slides. This is sort of, how do we do these comparisons? Apples to apples is pretty important. So among other results, so there were a couple of choices for lane change. So you could let it just do it automatically, or you could do it on demand. You'd like push the button, I want to change lanes now. People seem to prefer that. Lane change rates are generally lower when using the system. So the system is kind of doing its thing, and people kind of let it sit behind another vehicle, as opposed to when they're engaging in manual driving, they're making more lane changes, which is probably a risk reduction feature. They are less likely to exceed a hard braking threshold, so there's less sort of extreme braking. And then there were, and most of the attention reminders that occur, so again, this is Super Cruise, it's a hands-off system. Most of the attention reminders are resolved very quickly. There's just a tiny fraction of the ones that actually, when you've looked at this many miles and this many drivers, that actually result in a minimum risk condition kind of outcome. And then we saw no AACN events in that study during Super Cruise engaged driving. I believe I think this is the last one. So benchmarking. Henry, you asked the question in the wrong talk. So one of the areas that I've been working in quite a bit is trying to understand how, because, the basic, I think everybody kind of knows this, but, ADS are driven in different locations, different ODDs. The data, in a lot of ways, the biggest problem is ironically on the human crash data side. So we've got loads of data. It just isn't very specific. And importantly, it's not very specific on the exposure end. So this is our denominator. We know a lot about crashes. We know what happened in those crashes. We know where those crashes occurred. We just don't know where people are driving. And so that's a problem because we need that denominator to make really good apples to apples comparisons. You can sort of see the diagram with the apples on the lower right. So some of the things that we've been working on are, I guess, actually I should say, the other sort of big issue is there aren't enough miles of ADS driving to sort of observe the crashes, which are the outcome that you want. And so we've also done a lot of work on what we call surrogate outcomes. So validating events that are non-crash events but are crash-related enough that you can use them as a stand-in for evaluation of on-road performance. And similarly, how to incorporate that into safety cases. This is a list of sort of current research directions, and I think with 4 minutes we can let you read it and ask questions, unless you want to. There's a cool one in there, the threshold agnostic. Since we just talked about thresholds, we can just get around it. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, this is an open research area right now. So we're, with the data that we collected through the GTTR project, we are trying to come up with a threshold agnostic framework with that data set. We're also working on an open data set release, hopefully not in the short time frame, but on the medium horizon, let's say, with our trip recorder analysis project. And also we have 2 other projects with expanding telematics-based L2 evaluation. And we're always working on cross-method integration. So thanks for your attention. Any questions?
Thanks. Efe, maybe a question for you on your GTTR data set. Before, when we were talking with Wembo, we talked about in 100 million human-driven miles, maybe there's 1 fatal, maybe there's 200 crashes total. Do we have a way from your data to know how many near misses would happen in that 100 million miles of human-driven data?
I believe so, yes. So we calculated some near misses based on the parameters we defined, obviously. But in the data set, we can actually, as far as I know, we are able to pull that, right?
It depends on what you mean by near miss,
But
yes.
yes.
Yeah, I mean,
It
it'd be
is
interesting.
possible.
The rule of thumb we keep using is this sort of 2 orders of magnitude one, which I think comes more from intersections where we say, you know, for every crash, there's about 100 near misses, right? And so in the math I've been doing in my head, I'm thinking of this 100 million miles of driving, 1 fatal, 200 crashes, and like 20,000 near misses, right? And that last one is really tenuous.
Yeah,
And so
definitely.
I'm really interested. I'd love to know if there was a way to pull that out in a more disciplined way.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to shove you. So the surrogate work that I talked about in the previous slide. So a surrogate, when you say near miss, that is essentially an event with a threshold, right? Because so one of the problems with the term near miss is that, for example, in Sharp 2, it's just video review, right? It's there's a trigger and there's video review. And so it's actually kind of ill-defined in a lot of data sets. What we're trying to do is use the idea of a surrogate, which again is a metric and a threshold, and each of those that serves as it serves the role of what you mean by a near miss, right? We want to understand how the vehicle is dealing with those as a means of understanding how it's likely to deal with crashes or what its crash experience is likely to be. So the answer to the question you're asking is it depends on the specific definition of a surrogate. One of the things that we look at is what a good surrogate has a whole bunch of qualities, and there's like a whole validation thing. But the other thing is you always want it to be as common as possible without being unrelated to risk, because you want to observe it enough to see that you have less of it in a reasonable number of miles. So Forward collision alert happens about 2,000 times more often than a rear end crash. That's a thing I can tell you. And that's a number that we kind of like for a surrogate is 2,000 because that gets you into, when you do power calculations, it gets you into the realm of sort of manageable numbers of miles. If you're driving around measuring how many times you have whatever, like a 2-second time to collision or whatever the formula is for a forward collision alert, you will be able to see differences in it in a reasonable number of miles, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, something drivable. So but it varies with the metric, it varies with the conditions. We see big differences in highway versus local driving. So there's no simple answer to what you're asking.
Probably a better answer than just the one we're using right now, which is 100. I mean, You're saying 2,000. So that's much higher. So even getting a better answer in terms of orders of magnitude is something I'd be interested in.
Yeah, we can follow up.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
What are the next surrogate? Asking the
That's a whole talk, Henry, in which I cannot do in 0 seconds. So I'll give you a whole talk some other time, or we can talk offline, or to anybody. I mean, I'll send you slides, whatever you want to know. So, but yeah.
I had another question. In that merging situation, that video you showed, does the driver that's in the existing lane, are they rated badly because they got really close, or do they get rated good because they reacted quickly? How do you score the driver in that situation?
I wasn't a part of the rating, but if it was up to me, I would rate the driver a bit poorly because you can see the other vehicle approaching. But as far as I said, I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, it's tough to assign, both of them. Certainly the one car on the right is doing a bad job.
Probably, yes, but also the evasive action was pretty good. I mean, I would rate that well.
I saw a blinker. Thank you both very much.